Siomra
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Collecting Issues, where this week we'll be taking a look at Valiant Comics 2015 series Bloodshot Reborn, Volume 1, Colorado, collecting issues 1 to 5 of that series. Let's begin.
Hello.
Let's have an old chat.
That was alright, Ben. You did a good job there, I felt.
I froze a little bit there in the middle, Michael, but I'm okay now.
Very good.
Now. So,
Ben, we read Bloodshot
Reborn.
Ben, this was based on an internet suggestion.
Yes, somebody on the Reddit. It's
Yeah.
not the Reddit, but you get the idea. Gave us an old shout out, told us that Ben may have been a little bit unfair.
As you often are.
No, I don't think that's true. Don't know who would say that ever, but fair enough. And he said, give
Valiant
the
a go.
2015 reboot by Jeff Lemire a go. And we said, all right.
Jeff Lemire, Ben, of course, our first returning author on Collecting Issues.
Round 2, wrote Descender, wrote this.
Ben, before we go anywhere,
Go on.
tell me and the listeners, imagine, Ben, that we're idiots. And we've
I
never...
don't have to do that with you, Michael.
Oh, that's very good. That's a bit mean. Imagine that we've never heard of either Bloodshot or Valiant, and give us a little bit of background about who is he? What's he about? What does he want?
Cast your mind, Michael.
Yeah?
Cast your mind back
Yes.
to 1992.
Okay.
Guns.
I'm there. Yeah.
Pouches.
Yes.
Testosterone.
Yes.
And that's pretty much Bloodshot. He's a big gun-wielding super soldier. But he's not one of the good super soldiers.
Right.
He's one of the nasty boys. He's one of the ones they get to do all the dirty work. He's a wet work specialist,
Right.
Michael. A wet work specialist. Don't type that into the internet. It'll go terrible places. But imagine Wolverine and the Punisher got together
Yeah.
and sang, "What's love got to do?
Okay.
Got to do
I'm
with
imagining
it?"
that.
And then you would get this super soldier who was created through nanites, which was a big buzzword in the 90s.
A lot of 90s superheroes are based on nanites.
Yeah, they're nanite based. A lot of Valiant Comics superheroes are based on nanites.
Are they?
The same with anything from Wildstorm at that time. There's a lot of nanites doing a lot of work.
There were a
Nanotech
lot of nanites in the 90s.
never came to fruition. Nanites are not a thing.
Oh, they will be.
Maybe.
No, they will.
But anyway, he's very much the Weapon X of Valiant Comics. He was part of a project called Project Rising Steam, a shadowy government rising... It's not Rising Steam, is it?
Rising Steam?
It's not Rising Steam, it's Rising Spirit. Sorry, it's Project Rising Spirit.
Steam. Like a hot footpath after a rainy morning.
Project Rising Steam. But anyway, he is kind of super soldier extraordinaire. He can heal from any wound. He's got minor shape-shifting abilities, nothing huge, no mass changing, but definitely visual appearance changing,
Okay.
nanite abilities. Expert hand-to-hand combatant, loves
Yeah.
a gun,
Yeah.
and he's a bloody murder machine.
He's as white as you can get.
He's as white as a ghost with a big red blood dot for
And
Bloodshot.
Is that blood?
It seems to be where the nanites kind of spill out of when they have to do something, or
Okay.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He can interact with machinery. Look, he's pretty much. I never thought there was a character that would perfectly exemplify everything wrong with 90s comics, but that's him.
Hey, come on.
That's
now.
him. So that's why we got the recommendation to see this one, because according to the person who recommended it, it was a good kind of reboot of the character to take a look.
For the modern era.
Yeah, so we decided to take a look at it. And the kind of basic synopsis of this series was that Bloodshot has been de-nanited
Right.
by his former flame.
Again, Ben, sorry to interrupt you. We often end up in a situation like this where we're looking at a book and I have no bloody idea of the backstory. Was he de-nanited in the comics? Or are we starting here in media res and we're to imagine that he was de-nanited before?
No, he was de-nanited in the comics. Valiant Comics run, like many companies, suffer from canon fever, where many things lead on from many other things, and you do actually have to be quite familiar with the comic and its history to really understand. It doesn't really stop the whole thing. Basically, we're looking at a broken man here. He did have the nanites. He was very superpowered. His flame, his lady flame, Geomancer, perished. But upon perishing, removed the nanites from his blood, because she's a master of all things earth-based, and because nanites are made of metal,
that makes sense.
Can be removed.
It was her dying act.
It was her dying act to erase the nanites, to let him be a man once more.
Now, Ben, I'm going to jump in there, and I will say that although that is explained in the book, I'd heard of Bloodshot before we read this. This is the first thing I've ever read with Bloodshot in it.
Yes,
and I did not feel that there was a weight of having to know everything that happened before in this comic.
I did.
I didn't.
Fair enough.
I thought that it was perfectly clear. I mean, there is a certain amount to it where you have to be familiar with the tropes and ideas of comic books.
The trapeze.
You wouldn't give this to someone and say, as their first ever comic book, and go, here, read this.
No, you wouldn't.
But I'm more than familiar with the idea of characters being depowered.
Ah, yeah. No, it's a classic superhero trope.
It's a classic trope, and especially superheroes being depowered as a kind of last sacrificial act of a loved one or something like that.
That's probably why I found it tough to read, Michael, because I've seen it a million times before.
Ooh,
but anyway, we'll get to that in a second. So this centers around basically his life post 9/11.
Oh.
Well, it's a little bit post 9/11 as well. There's a lot of themes that we're going to take a look at today, Michael. And he's a broken man.
Yeah.
And things go wrong, and it turns out the nanites are out there acting the Mick.
Okay.
Not you.
Not me, that's my name.
But acting the bollocks. And, they're out there doing some stuff, and he realizes, I'm the only one that can bear this curse.
Right.
And he has to go, and he has to collect all the nanites and put them back in his bod. If this was brought out in the 80s, it could probably be used to describe the AIDS epidemic and the fear of AIDS and blood transfusions and stuff like that.
You think?
There's some very grotesque body stuff going on there. I'm not a big fan of it. The way that he has to reabsorb the nanites is he has to murder the person who's currently being controlled by them, and their blood seeps out of them and into him.
Well, the nanites seep out of them and into him.
Yeah, but it's blood. It's done through blood.
Well, his name's Bloodshot.
Yeah, I don't like it. It made me uncomfortable. I don't like blood stuff.
Okay. Why did you read a comic called Bloodshot if you don't like blood stuff?
The internet told me to. The internet told me to, Michael. But that's the basic central point of the plot. There are many themes running throughout the comic book, Michael. I think one of the ones that you accurately kind of mentioned there is it's a very post 9/11 world.
Oh, I was doing a joke, but okay, go on.
Well, it is. It's a very terror suspect. Who's the real terrorist? Is domestic terrorism an issue? Do we have to tackle that? The answer to all of the above questions is yes.
Most of the baddies that he comes across are kind of American stereotypes.
Yes, they are various American stereotypes for, I suppose, what you would call the degenerate class of America.
Yeah.
Your drug addicts.
Yeah.
Your Unabombers. Your... I don't know, your cinema mass shooters.
Yes, there is a lot of that, all right.
It's a very critical look at America's current climate, I would have thought. Clearly, things have been weighing on Mr. Jeff Lemire's mind. Sorry, we should have mentioned that Jeff Lemire wrote this, and he did it with the artist
Mico Sauyan.
Give us that. Mico Sauyan. And it's an interesting read, Michael. For me, there was nothing in it that sets it apart from any other comic that I've read.
Right.
It's very 90s.
Go on.
I think often to its detriment. I think it struggles to get away from the likes of Wolverine. I think it struggles to set itself apart from the likes of Punisher, War Journal. Had it not been for the fact that the Punisher series came out after this, I would have thought that it was directly inspired by that. Perhaps the Punisher series was directly inspired by that.
Are you talking about the Punisher TV series?
Yes, the Netflix series.
The first season or the second season?
Probably second season more than first season.
There's a lot of similarities in the first part of the Punisher TV series. The second series of the Punisher to this. There's the whole back alley motel setting.
Yeah.
There's the tortured man in back alley motels in a trench coat with guns who's a killer, and he ends up with a charge to look after that he doesn't necessarily want to.
He's given the opportunity to White Knight.
There is that, and there is... Yeah, I mean, it's got all of the same settings. It's got dingy motel bedrooms. It's got shacks. It's got local cop stations.
Bizarrely ripped men.
Well, I don't think there was a lot of rippedness in Punisher, but it does have a lot of shirtless men. It has a lot of monocolor lit bathrooms. Which
I'm not necessarily against in terms of thematic story representation. But, I don't know, I felt it was very, very shoehorned. There's a lot of tropes being stuffed into one comic here, Michael.
Go on.
So I think we've got the child prodigy.
Go on.
We've got the old
Who's
versus...
the child prodigy?
The child prodigy is the young agent with the strange
agent
ability to see events. She can sense traumatic events and kind of see them as long as she's in that space. She seems to... It is the It is the mildly Asperger's autistic child genius.
She does have that going on, right?
Yeah, she has the kind of uneasy intelligence thing, doesn't understand real people. She's watching a mass shooting while eating popcorn, and I think that's supposed to be kind of funny.
Watching a mass shooting in a cinema.
Which is obviously a reference to the Dark Knight shooting a couple of years ago. A very blatant kind of reference to that. We have the...
You're using blatant there. Blatant is inherently a negative word.
Sorry.
Do you mean it in a negative way?
No, probably a clear reference to the... Was that better? Clear?
I'm not saying anything's better. I'm just asking for clarity on your
probably
opinion.
a clear reference to the Joker shooting during the... Was it the Dark Knight?
I think it was, yeah.
It's probably the Dark Knight. He dressed up as the Joker and went to work. And then we have the grizzled veteran cop who won't take no shit from this younger upstart.
But gradually learns to respect her.
Gradually learns that, God damn it, I don't like you, but God damn it if I don't respect you.
God damn it, you get results. God damn it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. As you mentioned there, we have the child savior who makes him see the world in a new light.
Well, Ben, look, we only read issue 1 to 5 in this, but it certainly seems to be heading that way.
Yeah.
There might be an inversion later.
There might be.
I don't know.
She seems to... There's a clear foreshadowing there that would indicate that she's clearly going to have some negative impact on his life. He has the classic, God damn, I should have left her in that room, which is a classic noir trope. I should have never set eyes on the dame.
Maybe maybe I didn't read it very correctly. Maybe I misread it in places. But I always felt that his narration was from about 5 minutes in the future.
Yeah, it does seem to.
It's a narration that's aware of what happened in the past, but it's not an all-knowing narration.
Not at all.
It's being told at the end of the story.
Not at all.
It's an interesting choice.
There's a classic unreliable narrator trope here where he's having visions of two entities. One is the strange cartoon version of himself, which is Shotty, or what's the name of that?
Bloodsquirt.
Oh, that's a lot of rain. Bloodsquirt, thank you. Very terrible name. And Geomancer. So he's having these visions. So there's a classic madness trope. Am I going mad? Can I live with the sins of my past? We have a lot of this going on. There's a lot of things going on in the comic, Michael. And it almost suffers from an overstuffing.
Well, hold on a second. Let's unpack some of those things you just said there in rapid succession. Bloodsquirt.
Yes.
His little kind of impish follower character.
The id.
Is he a thing? Has he existed in previous comics?
This I don't know, Michael. I don't think he has. I think this is a new manifestation brought about by Jeff Lemire.
It is kind of a classic Jeff Lemire madness, kind of multiple personalities situation.
Yeah.
He is visually the most interesting thing in the comic.
Yeah.
I think.
By a mile.
Because he looks like he's from a different type of comic.
Yes, it's like an Archie comic or something like this. I hazard a guess that Jeff Lemire may have actually drawn Bloodsquirt. If you're familiar with Jeff Lemire's art style.
You think he added him in?
I think it's an agreement between the actual artist and him. I think Jeff Lemire drew... because the art style is very impressive. It's very in-depth in places. It's kind of a real symbol of that very ultra-realistic South American art style, also exemplified by Liber Mejo and this gentleman here of Spanish origin, Mico. I get his name wrong every time. Suave and definitely got that wrong. There is a certain. It's very accurate artwork anatomically. Yes, and shading wise, it's very strong.
There are a lot of human bodies in it, and they are not very stylized. They look like real people.
Yeah.
One of the slight disappointments with it, though, for me, was that although it's very anatomically accurate, I don't feel like the characters are consistently rendered.
No.
Because, for example, the lady character Magic, her hairstyle changes from picture to picture, which from page to page, which is either a sign of madness or... is it a sign that the artist is using a lot of photo reference?
I think we have too much photo reference here. I hazard a guess there's a bit of a trace going on.
Oh, Ben, that's places. A big accusation today.
It is a big accusation, but it wouldn't be out of character with a company like Valiant who often rushes a production.
That's Jesus, Ben.
There's also an artist change 4 issues in.
Look at that. There she has a full-on fringe.
Yes.
Or bangs for our American friends.
Yes.
And then the next scene, it's completely gone.
I think there's a lot of reference happening here, Michael. I think... he's exactly like the Punisher. I think in terms of character design, there's nothing too interesting here. Ray Garrison post-Nanite is just the Punisher. He's Frank Castle.
Go on.
And we have seen that version of Frank Castle in a lot of the
in a trench coat with a baseball cap.
Yeah, it's the ultimate Frank Castle from the Ultimate Comic series, drawn ably by I'm not going to remember his name. Never mind. It's drawn very well in the Ultimate Universe because I can't remember his name.
Good podcasting.
Excellent podcasting, top of the range. I think inconsistency is a thing that plagues a lot of this comic. It doesn't know what it wants to say. I think Jeff Lemire obviously had a lot of these domestic terrorism questions on his mind. Who is the real enemy, the enemy within, this kind of thing. I think he's obviously trying to play around with a lot of these questions. And I don't necessarily think he's doing a great job.
Ben, your idol and hero, Jeff Lemire.
Not quite. He has done a wonderful job in other comics. But this is something he's tackling. I think it's a very political comic.
Go on.
I think it's a very political comic. I think he's not necessarily drawing the most positive things. I don't like that the most violent character and evil character in the comic book is a black man.
He's a gangbanger.
Yeah, I don't enjoy that. I'm not sure it was necessary to have this very pastiche version of a black gangbanger.
Well, I mean, the depiction of the hick guy living out in the woods,
also
with
very
Confederate flag and stuff like that. He's not he's a drug addict.
Well, I think that's what I mean. I think there's a lot of subtlety lost here. I think Jeff Lemire is picking a standard American stereotype and just smacking it into the comic.
Do you think he's saying basically that this is what would happen if the worst of American society got superpowers?
I suppose that's what he's trying to say.
A gangbanger, a hick.
There's an inherent question in all of it, Michael, in that is it the nanites doing all this? Because it seems to me that the nanites are a madness virus. Outside of the hands of Ray Garrison.
He's the only one who can handle it.
But can he? Because he's not sure if Bloodsquirt and Geomancer are the nanites affecting his mind.
But they definitely are, aren't they?
Well, I don't know. There's not enough in this first collection to give us any hint as to whether it is or isn't, whether he's just simply a madman. Which is quite possible because he's had such a brutal life. I think the most interesting thing for me is that Bloodshot is gone and he's been left with all these horrible memories. Mm-hmm. Where I think it overdoes things is he sits next to his dossier, which would reveal his entire life to him, and he refuses to read it every night and drinks himself stupid instead and does a ton of drugs. Mm-hmm. It's very pastiche. Everything is a stereotype. Everything is something we've seen a million times. It's like a bad 80s movie.
Do you think, though, Ben, that some of this is because it was made in 2015 and a lot of these things have been repeated since?
No, I don't think so. I think...
Don't you think that this might have been heavily influential on Season 2 of Marvel's TV The Punisher?
But I don't think it's anything you wouldn't have seen in Marvel's comic book The Punisher. I don't think there's anything unique in this comic that we could necessarily say. Now, you are absolutely correct when you say that Season 2 Part 1 is heavily influenced.
Well, I'm not saying it.
It
certainly has
it certainly would ring true if that were the case. But I think some of the themes it explores are interesting, but I think what Jeff Lemire has done is he's set up too much for a good investigation of any of those tropes. Like I said, if we're looking at domestic terrorism, if we're looking at this concept, it's not necessarily the hosts to the nanites that are evil. Mm-hmm. We see in that one panel where the hick with the Confederate flag is on the floor saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to, I didn't want to." And in that case, we're not critiquing that way of thinking at all. He's a perfectly innocent man who was hijacked by evil robots.
Well, are the evil robots a metaphor for virulent thoughts?
That's an interesting question.
Maybe Jeff Lemire is a believer in moral relativity.
Yeah, but are the nanites then the buzz thoughts of the time, or are they the pseudo-intellectual ideologies that
is that what it is?
Run around? It's an interesting question.
Thanks, Ben.
I don't necessarily know that it's represented very well. It's hard for us to tell in those 5 issues.
Well, that you've stumbled upon a thing there, though. Of the comics that we've read for the podcast Collecting Issues, this very podcast that you're listening to now, this one, I think, is the first one. We've read one by Jeff Lemire. We've read Descender and Injection and Mr. Miracle. Mm-hmm. This is the first one which didn't feel like a complete story.
No, not at all. We are left with far more questions than we come in.
Yeah.
1 to 6 might have been more interesting.
I don't know. I haven't read 6.
I haven't either. No, but if they had have collected 1 to 6, it might have been more interesting.
Well, I don't know because I haven't read 6.
Because they pushed a weird interlude there in number 5. That seems far more like an interlude issue than anything we could actually...
Well, I don't know if it necessarily feels like an interlude issue because there's a change of artist.
No, it's not that. That did irritate me to death.
A lot of things irritate you.
Yeah.
It didn't irritate you to death, Ben. You're there. I can see you.
No, I died.
You're
they brought
alive.
me back in St. James's Hospital. I was in the neckbeard. I was in the neckbeard ward. Happens quite a lot. Can you not tell from my big red circle? Dun, dun, dun. No. Look, Michael.
Go on, I'm listening.
It's a tough old comic. Because one of the things that I posted, if anyone was following the Instagram, I put up a little note.
Yeah.
And I gave us a series of questions to take a look at. And one of the things is, do comics like this have a place outside of the 90s
Ben,
ultra-macho...
This comic won 8 Harvey Awards.
Why?
Nominated for 8 Harvey Awards.
Why did it win those awards, Michael? Was there anything in this comic award-worthy to you?
I liked how the geomancer who existed in his head looked like Black Widow from Infinity War.
Do you think that deserves a Harvey Award, Michael?
Isn't it? Why does she, though? Because this is before that. So did they steal her look? I think this comic might have been more influential than you're giving it credit for.
I don't think that's true at all, Michael. I think they're standard stock images.
Look at that Black Widow, Ben. Look at her. There's Black Widow from Infinity War.
It's not. It's every single sassy 90s female protagonist ever. I think all of these are stock images that have been traced in some degree.
Wow, you've gone really.
I think look at the framing. Look, one of the ones that really annoys me, and I'll show you here. There's a scene where he goes to buy some guns.
Yeah,
and there's a little critique of American gun law in there. Don't think we didn't see it, Jeff. We saw it.
He gives the man money.
Gives the man money, and the man gives him guns.
Yeah,
which is not how it's supposed to work. So little critique there, pushing for some more gun regulation. Jeff,
right, go on.
That we're pushing for. Just take a look at the background and the sky there. Take a look at the cars and the framing. Does that look like fully rendered art in the same style as some of the character shots we see?
Yes.
Does it? Or does it look like somebody slapped colours over reference images and slapped them into a composite scene?
I don't know, Ben.
It looks like somebody took images and slapped them into a composite scene, Michael, is what it looks like.
Is that what you think?
I'm not a big fan
you're taking
of this style. Taking a look at the sky there over the trees.
Well, is that not just watercolour?
Just take a look at them. That's not watercolour at all, Michael. That's a digital rendering.
So you're saying you don't like this art because it's too reliant on digital?
Overly reliant on lots of things. It's inconsistent, Michael. I don't like inconsistent art.
Right.
But I'm a snob, so don't listen to me.
Look, Ben, then you probably like the last issue, then, issue 5.
It's a little bit more comic booky.
A little bit more comic booky.
Very David Aja inspired, I would have felt.
Yeah, there's a touch of that, all right.
Yes.
There's a touch of the simple line. Yeah, there's a Hawkeye-ness to it, all right.
Yeah, I would have thought that was very inspired. And we know that that's not copied because Hawkeye came first.
I like this art more.
Because it's more comic booky. It's more realistic.
Well, it's less realistic.
It's more suited to the genre that it's doing. I think I
disagree. I think the kind of heavy
render.
Is this heavy render?
That's heavy render. It would be neo heavy render, but yeah.
I think that this is quite appropriate for the genre of comic that this occupies. And I really like the contrast between the kind of realistic, shadowy kind of grittiness of the art and blood squirt sticking out like a
sore
thumb little cartoon character. I like that.
Yeah, well then there you go.
But then again, I do think that he fights Kratos in issue.
I think that probably is Kratos doing it.
He just fights Kratos.
That probably is Kratos. But in terms of character design, not very inspired. In terms of storytelling, I don't know if I'm not invested in that character. I don't know if he's a good character. I don't know if he deserves saving. He's done nothing to indicate. He has one moral dilemma when he finds magic.
Does magic remind you of Tulip from Preacher?
She's very like Tulip, but an incompetent Tulip.
She has a little bit less agency at the moment, but I mean, even the design of her is somewhat similar.
This is what I mean. Again, in terms of agency and characters, she's a real damsel.
What's the kind of Harlequin-y character from The Invisibles?
Oh,
she has a touch of her about her as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think Jeff Lemire is channeling a lot of the greats when he's writing this. I don't know if Jeff Lemire is just collecting a paycheck. We've read other stuff by Jeff Lemire we really love. Descender was one that we both enjoyed, and certainly didn't lean into tropes in the same way that this one does.
This is very interesting, Ben. wasn't blown away by this, but I didn't hate it as much as with as much vitriol as you seem to
I
hate
hate it with a clear vitriol, I think.
That's
Blatant
interesting.
vitriol.
I think that Bloodshot is a great hero because he is the best hero with a widow's peak. He's a real hero for the balding man.
But you don't have a widow's peak.
I'm not talking about me. I have a perfectly fine head of hair.
Hmm.
I'm just saying he's a good inspiration for the balding man.
Well, there's another inconsistency, Michael. The nanobots are supposed to heal things at a prime level. So why are they allowing a widow's peak to exist? Surely he would drop back to his prime.
You're saying that a widow's peak is some sort of flaw there, Ben.
Well, it's a genetic sign of aging. The body not repairing in the same way. No,
that's not true.
No, not true.
Look, we're not going to get into
fair
that.
enough. Look, anyway, we're not here to talk about receding hairlines. There are other interesting things throughout the comic. Is Ray Garrison's fractured identity kind of a mirror to America's fractured identity?
Oh,
where do we stand? Are we liberal? Are we Republican? What are we doing? It's a whole thing. I don't know why I did Rex Mason there towards the end of that, but I did.
Go more in depth into that. Don't just say that and then move on.
Well, he's trying to find his place. Are we? I think really what we look at here is
violence the solution to
violence? Is violence the solution to our problem? Are we a fractured nation? What are we supposed to do to come together as
We're not Americans, though, Ben.
We're not Americans, but the comic is firmly American.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great example of American fiction. It's supposed to be a deconstruction of masculinity in terms of violence, how we do things. Despite that, we never see a payoff to Rex Garrison's constant moral questioning when it comes down to it.
We don't see a payoff in these 5 issues.
But that's what we're reviewing, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
Because we're not supposed to look outside the 5 issues.
No, we haven't looked. I haven't
because
looked outside.
You gave me a whole memo that I had to read.
I haven't looked outside the 5 issues, but books, especially comic books, don't necessarily. This to me is where I'm going with this, Ben. Is this doesn't feel like it was written for the trade?
No, it's written as an ongoing series. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you there.
And it might actually be better if you were to read, let's say, the first 10 issues.
Yeah. Fair enough. The 10 would probably have done us. We should have gone with 10.
No, well, look, we reviewed what we reviewed, Ben. That's all I'm saying. What more questions do you have there in your little bloody thing?
I'm all out of questions now, Michael. I don't know. In terms of, you could get in touch with us, ladies and gentlemen, and tell us how you feel about it. Obviously, I'm a snob, and I don't tend to like genre-specific things, especially if they're 90s genre-specific. So fucking have at me. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I don't get. Tell me why. If the person who suggested this to us would like to get in touch with us and tell me why I'm being unfair again, I would be more than happy to listen. I probably won't retract any of my statements because I've read it now and that's how I feel about it. And
look, Ben, you're a real flip-flopper. I think
right,
if someone was to present a pretty good argument, you'd retract it pretty quickly.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do when you get a good argument? You're not supposed to reassess your own opinion and adjust.
That's what I'm saying.
Just because you don't do it, Michael, doesn't mean it's
I bloody do it all the time. Ben. I used to think you were quite sound.
Oh, you fool! You fool!
Ben, leave the listeners with some questions there.
So I think one of the interesting questions that comes up is who's re-released the nanobots? Who's responsible?
Oh, yeah.
What role will strange mystic Asperger's girl play in future issues? Will she come around to not Frank Castle's, Ray Garrison's way of thinking? What's going to happen? If you enjoyed this, then you'll enjoy a lot of Jeff Lemire's work. You might also enjoy, it's a hyper-masculine American narrative, which is a whole genre of fiction in itself, starting with Hemingway and rolling on down further. You might enjoy the other hyper-masculine investigation into the male psychology that Jeff Lemire did, which is Old Man Logan. He ran the Old Man Logan series for Marvel for quite a while, where the art, again, is very realistic, but much more stylized and far more to my liking. It's Old Man Logan, and you can just look up the independent series that he ran. Not Old Man Logan, the Mark Millar, Old Man Logan by Jeff Lemire.
If you liked the kind of fractured mentality, what's real, what's imaginary aspect of it as well, you could give Moon Knight a go.
Moon Knight is a great shout. Good shout there.
If you enjoy the setting, because bloody hell, there's a lot of similar setting. If you like the setting and the atmosphere and the colours, you just watch Punisher season 2. Some of Punisher season 1 as well, but really particularly Punisher season 2, and especially the first half of Punisher season 2. Punisher season 2 is almost an adaptation of this.
For a little bit more look at this kind of tortured, violent man, what do we do in our society? Take a look at Jason Aaron's Southern Bastards. That's a very good look at family and how our family influences the way that we solve problems and things like that. And being dragged back to to a culture that you may have left behind, but you're forced to engage in again. It's a very good look at that. You could also take a look at Black Hammer and the way that the character of Emmett, it's Emmett, isn't it? The Captain America paragon.
Can't remember.
From Black Hammer. Take a look at the way he's represented. It's a very similar thing. Jeff Lemire's got a favourite type of story to tell, and that's it, apparently.
And look, and if you've read any further into this, tell us, do you think it'll change Ben's mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I will read Volume 2 if you think. We'll do a Bloodshot Reborn revisited, and we'll take a look at that. In terms of finishing notes, there are some good representations. I love the cover. The cover's a great piece of design. I thought it was a striking cover. Quite enjoyed it. Not quite sure what is nominated for so many Harvey Awards.
Did it win any?
I don't know. That's the thing. You can nominate lots of things. Doesn't mean you'll win any. I don't think a comic like this has a place in necessarily. It could just use a little bit of streamlining. Jeff could have.
Well, hold on.
Eased up.
Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm going to have to interrupt you there. There's a very big difference between it doesn't have a place and it could have done with a bit of streamlining.
Sorry, it doesn't have a place outside the 90s. Sorry, I should have finished my sentence. It doesn't have a place outside the 90s. But prove me wrong. Go ahead. Let us know down below. Let us know what you thought of it. Do you think I'm being completely unfair? I quite possibly am.
You usually are.
Yeah, it's not true. But yeah, let us know down below. You can get in touch with us on the Facebook group. You can get in touch with us on...
You know what's good?
Yeah.
The Wildstorm Volume 1. It deals similarly with kind of nanites and government agencies coming out of the woodwork and
it's quite
coming back to
interesting.
hunt people. I like that. I guess give that a read.
So if you didn't like this and it left a poor taste in your mouth, go have a look at that. Go have a look at the Wildstorm Volume 1. We should probably do that on this podcast at some point. Very good.
The Wildstorm Volume 1. We'll do it eventually.
Definitely do that. But anyway, guys, that's it from us for this week. If you do have any thoughts or opinions,
what are we doing in 2 weeks?
I don't know what we're doing in 2 weeks. We didn't figure that out
yet. Yeah.
It'll be launched. We might stick it on as a little tag on here at the end, and let people know. But anyway, that's it from us this week. Let us know your thoughts. Get in touch with us. We're on Sean Rebuild as well. If you want to take a look at any of the YouTube content,
you're going to have to explain what Sean Rebuild is.
Sean Rebuild is our website. Sorry, that's my mistake. SEOMRABEAG.com. We have a few complaints about the Irish R. So we fixed it there. You can get in touch with us there. We're on Facebook. And let Mick know what you thought, because Mick does all the Facebook stuff. I don't.
We're on the Facebook. Yes, shoot us now. Gmail at Michael and Benjamin's podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely.
What?
And Valiant, if you want to sponsor the podcast, don't listen to this episode.
You going to put this on the Valiant Reddit, Ben?
Oh, yeah.
You that brave?
Yeah, I am.
All right, let's
absolutely. Controversy. There's no such thing as bad press, Michael. Bye.
Bye.